Oh, hello, and welcome back to Baby Alice's Stories. We now return to The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. Robin Hood and Allan Dale. It has just been told how 3 unlucky adventures fell upon Robin Hood and Little John, all in one day, bringing them sore ribs and aching bones. So next, we will tell how they made up for those ill happenings by a good action that came about not without some small pain to Robin. 2 days had passed by, and somewhat of the soreness had passed away from Robin Hood's joints. Yet still, when he moved of a sudden, and without thinking, pain here and there would, as it were, jog him, crying, "Thou hast had a drooping, good fellow." Drubbing, a beating, a thrashing. "Thou hast had a drubbing, good fellow." The day was bright and jocund, cheerful and light-hearted. Jocund. The day was bright and jocund, and the morning dew still lay upon the grass. Under the greenwood tree sat Robin Hood. On one side was Will Scarlet, lying at full length upon his back, gazing up into the clear sky, with hands clasped behind his head. Upon the other side sat Little John, fashioning a cudgel out of a stout crab-tree limb. Elsewhere upon the grass sat or lay many others of the band. "By the faith of my heart," quoth merry Robin, "I do bethink me that we have had no one to dine with us for this long time. Our money groweth low in the purse, for no one hath come to pay a reckoning for many a day. Now busk thee, good Stuteley, and choose thee 6 men, and get thee gone to Forsway or thereabouts, and see that thou bringest someone to eat with us this evening. Meantime, we will prepare a grand feast to do whosoever may come the greater honour. And stay, good Stuteley." "And stay, good Stuteley, I would have thee take Will Scarlet with thee, for it is meet that he should become acquaint with the ways of the forest." "Now, do I thank thee, good master," quoth Stuteley, springing to his feet, "that thou hast chosen me for this adventure. Truly my limbs do grow slack through abiding idly here. As for 2 of my 6, I will choose Midge the miller, and Arthur a Bland, for as well thou knowest, good master, they are stout fists at the quarterstaff. Is it not so, Little John?" At this all laughed, but Little John and Robin, who twisted up his face. "I can speak for Midge," said he, "and likewise for my cousin Scarlet. This very blessed morn I looked at my ribs and found them as many colours as a beggar's cloak." So, having chosen 4 more stout fellows, Will Stuteley and his band set forth to Forsway, to find whether they might not come across some rich guest to feast that day in Sherwood with Robin and his band. For all the livelong day they abided near this highway, Each man had brought with him a good store of cold meat, and a bottle of stout March beer, to stay his stomach till the homecoming. So when high noontide had come, they sat them down upon the soft grass, beneath a green and wide, spreading hawthorn bush, and held a hearty and jovial feast. After this, one kept watch while the others napped, for it was a still and sultry day. Thus they passed the time pleasantly enow, but no guest such as they desired showed his face in all the time that they lay hidden there. Many passed along the dusty road in the glare of the sun. Now it was a bevy of chattering damsels merrily tripping along. Now it was a plodding tinker. Now a merry shepherd lad. Now a sturdy farmer. All gazing ahead along the road, unconscious of the 7 stout fellows that lay hidden so near them. Such were the travellers along the way, but fat abbot, rich esquire, or money-laden usurer came there none. At last the sun began to sink low in the heavens. The light grew red and the shadows long. The air grew full of silence. The birds twittered sleepily, and from afar came faint and clear the musical song of the milkmaid calling the kine home to the milking. Then Stuteley arose from where he was lying. "A plague of such ill luck," quoth he. "Here have we abided all day, and no bird worth the shooting, so to speak, hath come within reach of our bolt. Had I gone forth on an innocent errand, I had met a dozen stout priests or a score of pursy money-lenders, but it is ever thus. The dun deer are never so scarce as when one has a grey goose feather nipped betwixt the fingers. Come, lads, let us pack up and home again, say I." Accordingly the others arose, and coming forth from out the thicket, they all turned their toes back again to Sherwood. After they had gone some distance, Will Stuteley, who headed the party, suddenly stopped. "Hist!" quoth he, for his ears were as sharp as those of a 5-year-old fox. "Hark, lads! Methinks I hear a sound." At this all stopped and listened with bated breath, albeit for a time they could hear nothing, their ears being duller than Stuteley's. At length they heard a faint and melancholy sound, like someone in lamentation. "Ha!" quoth Will Scarlet, "this must be looked into. There is someone in distress nigh to us here." "I know not," quoth Will Stuteley, shaking his head doubtfully. "Our master is ever rash about thrusting his finger into a boiling pot, but for my part I see no use in getting ourselves into mischievous coils. Yon is a man's voice, if I mistake not, and a man should be always ready to get himself out from his own pothers." Then out spake Will Scarlet boldly. "Now out upon thee to talk in that manner, Stuteley. Stay, if thou dost list. I go to see what may be the trouble of this poor creature." "Nay," quoth Stuteley, "thou dost leap so quickly, thou'lt tumble into the ditch. Who said I would not go? Come along, say I." Thus saying, he led the way, the others following till, after they had gone a short distance, they came to a little opening in the woodland, whence a brook, after gurgling out from under the tangle of overhanging bushes, spread out into a broad and glassy, pebbled pool. By the side of this pool, and beneath the branches of a willow, lay a youth upon his face, weeping aloud. The sound of which had first caught the quick ears of Stuteley. His golden locks were tangled, his clothes were all awry, and everything about him betokened sorrow and woe. Over his head, from the branches of the osier, hung a beautiful harp of polished wood, inlaid with gold and silver in fantastic devices. Beside him lay a stout ashen bow and half a score of fair, smooth arrows. "Hilloa!" shouted Will Stutely, when they had come out from the forest into the little open spot. "Who art thou, fellow, that liest there killing all the green grass with salt water?" Hearing the voice, the stranger sprang to his feet, and, snatching up his bow and fitting a shaft, held himself in readiness for whatever ill might befall him. "Truly," said one of the yeomen, when they had seen the young stranger's face, I do know that lad right well. He is a certain minstrel that I have seen hereabouts more than once. It was only a week ago I saw him skipping across the hill like a yearling doe. A fine sight he was then, with a flower at his ear and a cock's plume stuck in his cap. But now methinks our cockerel is shorn of his gay feathers." "Pah!" cried Will Stutely, coming up to the stranger. "Wipe thine eyes, man. I do hate to see a tall, stout fellow so snivelling like a girl of 14 over a dead tomtit." Tomtit, a popular name for any of a number of small active songbirds, especially a tit or a chickadee. Tomtit. "Put down thy bow, man. We mean thee no harm." But Will Scarlet, seeing how the stranger, who had a young and boyish look, was stung by the words that Stutely had spoken, came to him and put his hand upon the youth's shoulder. "Nay, thou art in trouble, poor boy," he said kindly. "Mind not what these fellows have said. They are rough, but they mean thee well. Mayhap they do not understand a lad like thee. Thou shalt come with us, and perchance we may find a certain one that can aid thee in thy perplexities, whatsoever they may be." "Yes, truly, come along," said Will Stutely gruffly. "I meant thee no harm, and may mean thee some good. Take down thy singing tool from off this fair tree, and away with us." The youth did as he was bidden, and with bowed head and sorrowful step accompanied the others, walking beside Will Scarlet. So they wended their way through the forest. The bright light faded from the sky, and a glimmering grey fell over all things. From the deeper recesses of the forest, the strange whispering sounds of night time came to the ear. All else was silent, saving only for the rattling of their footsteps amid the crisp, dry leaves of the last winter. At last a ruddy glow shone before them, here and there through the trees. A little further, and they came to the open glade, now bathed in the pale moonlight. In the center of the open crackled a great fire, throwing a red glow on all around. At the fire were roasting juicy steaks of venison, pheasants, capons, and fresh fish from the river. All the air was filled with the sweet smell of good things cooking. The little band made its way across the glade, many yeomen turning with curious looks and gazing after them, but none speaking or questioning them. So, with Will Scarlet upon one side and Will Stutely upon the other, the stranger came to where Robin Hood sat on a seat of moss under the greenwood tree, with Little John standing beside him. "Good even, fair friend," said Robin Hood, rising as the other drew near. "And hast thou come to feast with me this day?" "Alas, I know not," said the lad, looking around him with dazed eyes, for he was bewildered with all that he saw. "Truly, I know not whether I be in a dream, said he to himself in a low voice. Nay, Mary, quoth Robin, laughing, thou art awake, as thou wilt presently find, for a fine feast is a-cooking for thee. Thou art our honoured guest this day. Still the young stranger looked about him, as though in a dream. Presently he turned to Robin. Methinks, says he, I know now where I am, and what hath befallen me. Art not thou the great Robin Hood? Thou hast hit the bull's eye, quoth Robin, clapping him upon the shoulder. Men hereabout do call me by that name. Sin thou knowest me, thou knowest also that he who feasteth with me must pay his reckoning. I trust thou hast a full purse with thee, fair stranger. Alas, said the stranger, I have no purse, nor no money either, saving only the half of a sixpence, the other half of which mine own dear love doth carry in her bosom, hung about her neck by a strand of silken thread. At this speech, a great shout of laughter went up from those around. Whereat the poor boy looked as he would die of shame. But Robin Hood turned sharply to Will Stutely. Why, how now, quoth he, is this the guest that thou hast brought us to fill our purse? Methinks thou hast brought but a lean cock to the market. Nay, good master, answered Will Stutely, grinning. He is no guest of mine. It was Will Scarlet that brought him thither. Then up spoke Will Scarlet, and told how they had found the lad in sorrow, and how he had brought him to Robin, thinking that he might perchance aid him in his trouble. Then Robin Hood turned to the youth, and placing his hand upon the other's shoulder, held him off at arm's length, scanning his face closely. A young face, quoth he in a low voice, half to himself. A kind face, a good face. 'Tis like a maiden's for purity, and withal the fairest that e'er mine eyes did see. But if I may judge fairly by thy looks, grief cometh to young as well as to old. At these words, spoken so kindly, the poor lad's eyes brimmed up with tears. Nay, nay, said Robin hastily. Cheer up, lad. I warrant thy case is not so bad that it cannot be mended. What may be thy name? Allan a Dale is my name, good master. Allan a Dale, repeated Robin, musing. Allan a Dale. It doth seem to me that the name is not altogether strange to mine ears. Yea, surely thou art the minstrel of whom we have been hearing lately, whose voice so charmeth all men. Dost thou not come from Dale of Rother Stream, over beyond Stavely? Yea, truly, answered Allan, I do come thence. How old art thou, Allan? Said Robin. I am but 20 years of age. Methinks thou art over young to be perplexed with trouble, quoth Robin kindly. Then turning to the others, he cried, Come, lads, busk ye and get our feast ready. Only thou, Will Scarlet, and thou, Little John, stay here with me. Then, when the others had gone, each man about his business, Robin turned once more to the youth. Now, lad, said he, tell us thy troubles, and speak freely. A flow of words doth ever ease the heart of sorrows. It is like opening the waste when the mill dam is over full. Come, sit thou here beside me, and speak at thine ease. Then straightway the youth told the three yeomen all that was in his heart, at first in broken words and phrases, then freely and with greater ease when he saw that all listened closely to what he said. So he told them how he had come from York to the sweet vale of Rother, travelling the country through as a minstrel, stopping now at a castle, now at a hall, and now at farmhouse. How he had spent one sweet evening in a certain broad, low farmhouse, where he sang before a stout franklin and a maiden as pure and lovely as the first snowdrop of spring. How he had played and sung to her, and how sweet Ellen o' the Dale had listened to him, and had loved him. Then in a low, sweet voice, scarcely louder than a whisper, he told how he had watched for her, and met her now and then when she went abroad, but was all too afraid in his sweet presence to speak to her, until at last, beside the banks of Rother, he had spoken of his love, and she had whispered that which had made his heartstrings quiver for joy. Then they broke a sixpence between them, and vowed to be true to one another forever. Next he told how her father had discovered what was a-doing, and had taken her away from him, so that he never saw her again, and his heart was sometimes like to break. How this morn, only 1 short month and a half from the time that he had seen her last, he had heard and knew it so to be, that she was to marry old Sir Stephen of Trent 2 days hence. For Ellen's father thought it would be a grand thing to have his daughter marry so high, albeit she wished it not, nor was it wonder that a knight should wish to marry his own sweet love, who was the most beautiful maiden in all the world. To all this the yeomen listened in silence. The clatter of many voices, jesting and laughing, sounded around them, and the red light of the fire shining on their faces and in their eyes. So simple were the poor boy's words, and so deep his sorrow, that even little John felt a certain knotty lump rise in his throat. "I wonder not," said Robin, after a moment's silence, "that thy true love loved thee, for thou hast surely a silver cross beneath thy tongue, even like good Saint Francis, that could charm the birds of the air by his speech." "By the breath of my body," burst forth Little John, seeking to cover his feelings with angry words, "I have a great part of a mind to go straight away and cudgel the nasty life out of the body of that same vile Sir Stephen. Marry, come up, say I, what a plague does an old weazen think that tender lasses ought to be bought like pullets o' the market day? Like pullets o' a market day? Out upon him! Aye, but no matter, only let him look to himself." Then up spoke Will Scarlet. "Methinks it seemeth but ill done of the lass, that she should so quickly change at others' bidding, more especially when it cometh to the marrying of a man as old as this same Sir Stephen. I like it not in her, Allan." "Nay," said Allan hotly, "thou dost wrong her. She is as soft and gentle as a stock dove. I know her better than anyone in all the world. She may do her father's bidding, but if she marries Sir Stephen, her heart will break and she will die. My own sweet dear, He stopped and shook his head, for he could say nothing further. While the others were speaking, Robin Hood had been sunk in thought. "Methinks I have a plan might fit thy case, Allan," said he. "But tell me first, thinkest thou, lad, that thy true love hath spirit enough to marry thee were ye together in church, the banns published, and the priest found, even were her father to say her nay? Ay, marry would she, cried Allan eagerly. Then if her father be the man that I take him to be, I will undertake that he shall give you both his blessing as wedded man and wife in the place of old Sir Stephen, and upon his wedding morn. But stay, now I bethink me, there is one thing reckoned not upon, the priest. Truly those of the cloth do not love me overmuch, and when it comes to doing as I desire in such a matter, they are as like as not to prove stiff-necked. As to the lesser clergy, they fear to do me a favour because of abbot or bishop. Nay, quoth Will Scarlet, laughing. So far as that goeth, I know of a certain friar that, couldst thou but get on the soft side of him, would do thy business, even though Pope Joanne herself stood forth to ban him. He is known as the Curtal Friar of Fountain Abbey, and dwelleth in Fountain Dale. But, quoth Robin, Fountain Abbey is a good 100 miles from here, and we would help this lad. We have no time to go thither and back before his true love will be married. Naught is to be gained there, cause. Yeah, quoth Will Scarlet, laughing again. But this Fountain Abbey is not so far away as the one of which thou speakest, uncle. The Fountain Abbey of which I speak is no such rich and proud place as the other, but a simple little cell, yet withal as cosy a spot as ever stout anchorite dwelled within. I know the place well, and can guide thee thither, for though it is a goodly distance, yet methinks a stout pair of legs could carry a man there and back in one day. Then give me thy hand, Allan, cried Robin, and let me tell thee, I swear by the bright hair of Saint Aelfrida, that this time 2 days hence Eleanor Dale shall be thy wife. I will seek this same friar of Fountain Abbey tomorrow day, and I warrant I will get upon the soft side of him, even if I have to drum one soft. At this, Will Scarlet laughed again. Be not too sure of that, good uncle, quoth he. Nevertheless, from what I know of him, I think this Curtal Friar will gladly join two such fair lovers, more especially if there be good eating and drinking afoot thereafter. But now one of the band came to say that the feast was spread upon the grass. So Robin leading the way, the others followed to where the goodly feast was spread. Merry was the meal. Jest and story passed freely, and all laughed till the forest rang again. Allan laughed with the rest, for his cheeks were flushed with the hope that Robin Hood had given him. At last the feast was done, and Robin Hood turned to Allan, who sat beside him. Now, Allan, quoth he, so much has been said of thy singing that we would fain have a taste of thy skill ourselves. Canst thou not give us something? Surely, answered Allan readily, for he was no third-rate songster that must be asked again and again, but said yes or no at the first bidding. So, taking up his harp, he ran his fingers lightly over the sweetly sounding strings, gling-gling-gling-gling-gling, and all was hushed about the cloth. Then, backing his voice with sweet music in his harp, he sang, gling-gling-gling-gling-gling, May Ellen's Wedding, giving an account of how she was beloved by a fairy prince, who took her to his own home. May Ellen sat beneath a thorn, and in a shower around, the blossoms fell at every breeze, like snow upon the ground. And in a lime tree near was heard the sweet song of a strange wild bird. Oh, sweet Sweet, sweet, oh piercing sweet, oh lingering sweet the strain. May Ellen's heart within her breast stood still with blissful pain. And so with listening upturned face, she sat as dead in that fair place. Come down from out the blossoms, bird, come down from out the tree. And on my heart I'll let thee lie, and love thee tenderly. Thus cried May Ellen, soft and slow, soft and low, from where the hawthorn shed its snow. Down dropped the bird on quivering wing from out the blossoming tree, and nestled in her snowy breast, my love, cried she. Then straightway home, mid sun and flower, she bare him to her own sweet bower. The day hath passed to mellow night, the moon float o'er the lea, and in its solemn pallid light a youth stands silently. A youth of beauty strange and rare, within May Ellen's bower there. He stood where over the pavement cold the glimmering moonbeams lay. May Ellen glazed with wide scared eyes, nor could she turn away. For as in mystic dreams we see, a spirit stood he silently. All in a low and breathless voice, whence comest thou, said she? Art thou the creature of a dream, or a vision that I see? Then soft spake he, as night winds shiver through straining reeds beside the river. I came a bird on feathered wing from distant fairyland, where murmuring waters softly sing upon the golden strand, where sweet trees are forever green, and there my mother is the queen. No more May Ellen leaves her bower to grace the blossoms fair, but in the hushed in midnight hour they hear her talking there. Or when the moon is shining white, they hear her singing through the night. O don thy silks and jewels fine, May Ellen's mother said, for hither comes the Lord of Line, and thou this Lord must wed. May Ellen said, it may not be, he ne'er shall find his wife in me. Up spoke her brother, dark and grim, now by the bright blue sky, ere yet a day hath gone for him, thy wicked bird shall die. For he hath wrought thee bitter harm by some strange art or cunning charm. Then with a sad and mournful song away the bird did fly, and o'er the castle eaves and through the grey and windy sky. Come forth, then cried the brother grim, why dost thou gaze so after him? It is May Ellen's wedding day, the sky is blue and fair, and many a lord and lady gay in church are gathered there. The bridegroom was Sir Hugh the Bold, all clad in silk and cloth of gold. It came the bride in samite white, with a white wreath on her head. Her eyes were fixed with a glassy look, her face was as the dead. And when she stood among the throng, she sang a wild and wondrous song. There came a strange and rushing sound, like the coming wind doth bring, and in the open window shot 9 swans on whistling wing, and high above their heads they flew, in gleaming fight the darkness through. Around May Ellen's head they flew, in wide and windy fight, and 3 times round the circle drew, the guests shrank in affright. And the priest beside the altar there did cross himself with muttered prayer. But the 3rd time they flew around, for Ellen straight was gone, and in her place upon the ground there stood a snow-white swan. Then with a wild and lovely song it joined the swift and winged throng. There's ancient men at weddings been for 60 years and more, but such a wondrous wedding day they never saw before. But none could check and none could stay the swans that bore the bride away. Not a sound broke the stillness when Allan a Dale had done, but all sat gazing at the handsome singer, for so sweet was his voice and the music that each man sat with bated breath, lest 1 drop more should come and he should lose it. By my faith and truth, quoth Robin at last, drawing a deep breath, lad, thou must not leave our company, Allan. Wilt thou not stay with us here in the sweet green forest? Truly I do feel my heart go out toward thee with great love. Then Allan took Robin's hand and kissed it. Mwah. I will stay with thee always, dear master, said he, for never have I known such kindness as thou hast shown me this day. Then Will Scarlet stretched forth his hand and shook Allan's in token of friendship, in token of fellowship, as did Little John likewise, and thus the famous Allan a Dale became one of Robin Hood's band. Robin Hood seeks the Curtal Friar. The stout yeomen of Sherwood Forest were ever early risers of a morn, more especially when their summertime had come. For then, in the freshness of the dawn, the dew was always the brightest, and the song of the small birds the sweetest. Quoth Robin, Now will I go to seek this same Friar Fountain Abbey, of whom we spake yesternight, and I will take with me 4 of my good men, and these 4 shall be Little John, Will Scarlet, David of Doncaster, and Arthur Bland. Bide the rest of you here, and Will Stuteley shall be your chief while I am gone. Then straightway Robin donned a fine steel coat of chainmail, over which he put on a light jacket of Lincoln green. Upon his head he clapped a steel cap, and this he covered by one of soft white leather, in which stood a nodding cock's plume. By his side he hung a good broadsword of tempered steel, the bluish blade marked all over with strange figures of dragons, winged women, and what not. A gallant sight was Robin so arrayed, I wot, the glint of steel showing here and there as the sunlight caught brightly the links of polished mail that showed beneath his green coat. So, having arrayed himself, he and the 4 yeomen set forth upon their way, Will Scarlet taking the lead, for he knew better than the others whither to go. Thus mile after mile they strode along, now across a brawling stream, now along a sunlit road, now adon some sweet forest path, over which the trees met in green and rustling canopy, and at the end of which a herd of startled deer dashed away, with rattle of leaves and crackle of branches. Onward they walked, with song and jest and laughter, till noontide was past. When at last they came to the banks of a wide, glassy, and lily-padded stream, here a broad, beaten path stretched along beside the banks, on which path laboured the horses that tugged at the slow-moving barges, laden with barley meal or what not, from the countryside to the many-towered town. But now, in the hot silence of the midday, no horse was seen, nor any man besides themselves. Behind them and before them stretched the river, its placid bosom ruffled here and there by the purple dusk of a small breeze. "Now, good uncle," quoth Will Scarlet at last, when they had walked for a long time beside this sweet, bright river, "just beyond yon bend ahead of us is a shallow ford which in no place is deeper than thy mid-thigh, and upon the other side of the stream is a certain little hermitage hidden amidst the bosky tangle of the thickets, wherein dwelleth the Friar of Fountain Dale. Thither will I lead thee, for I know the way, albeit it is not over hard to find." "Nay," quoth jolly Robin, stopping suddenly, "had I thought that I should have had to wade water, even were it so crystal a stream as this, I had donned other clothes than I have upon me. But no matter now, for after all a wetting will not wash the skin away, and what must be, must. But bide ye here, lads, for I would enjoy this merry adventure alone. Nevertheless, listen well, and if ye hear me sound upon my bugle horn, come quickly." So saying, he turned and left them, striding onward alone. Robin had walked no farther than where the bend of the road hid his good men from his view, when he stopped suddenly, for he thought that he heard voices. He stood still and listened, and presently heard words passed back and forth, betwixt what seemed to be two men, and yet the two voices were wondrously alike. The sound came from over behind the bank, that here was steep and high, dropping from the edge of the road a half a score of feet to the sedgy verge of the river. "'Tis strange," muttered Robin to himself, after a space, when the voices had ceased their talking. "Surely there be two people that spoke, the one to the other, and yet methinks their voices are mightily alike. I make my vow that never have I heard the like in all my life before. Truly, if this twain are to be judged by their voices, no two peas were ever more alike. I will look into this matter." So saying, he came softly to the river bank, and laying him down upon the grass, peered over the edge and down below. All was cool and shady beneath the bank. A stout osier grew, not straight upward, but leaning across the water, shadowing the spot with its soft foliage. All around grew a mass of feathery ferns, such as hide and nestle. Nestle. Settle or lie comfortably within or against something. All around grew a mass of feathery ferns, such as hide and nestle in cool places, and up to Robin's nostrils came the tender odour of the wild thyme, that loves the moist verges of running streams. Here, with his broad back against the rugged trunk of the willow tree, and half hidden by the soft ferns around him, sat a stout, brawny fellow, but no other man was there. His head was as round as a ball, and covered with a mat of close-clipped, curly black hair that grew low down on his forehead. But his crown was shorn as smooth as the palm of one's hand, which together with his loose robe, cowl, and string of beads, showed that which his looks never would have done, that he was a friar. His cheeks were as red and shining as a winter crab, albeit they were nearly covered over with a close curly black beard, as were his chin and upper lip likewise. His neck was thick like that of a north country bull, and his round head closely set upon his shoulders, e'en a match for those of Little John himself. And his round head closely set upon shoulders, e'en a match for those of Little John himself. Beneath his bushy black brows danced a pair of little grey eyes that could not stand still for very drollery of humour. No man could look into his face and not feel his heartstrings tickled by the merriment of their look. By his side lay a steel cap, which he had laid off for the sake of the coolness to his crown. His legs were stretched wide apart, and betwixt his knees he held a great pasty compounded of juicy meats of divers kinds, made savoury with tender young onions, both meat and onions being mingled with a good rich gravy. In his right fist he held a great piece of brown crust, at which he munched sturdily, and every now and then he thrust his left hand into the pie and drew it forth full of meat. Anon he would take a mighty pull at a great bottle of Malmsey that lay beside him. "By my faith," quoth Robin to himself, "I do verily believe that this is the merriest feast, the merriest wight, the merriest place, and the merriest sight in all merry England. Methought there was another here, but it must have been this holy man talking to himself." So Robin lay watching the friar, and the friar, all unknowing that he was so overlooked, ate his meal placidly. At last he was done, and having first wiped his greasy hands upon the ferns and wild thyme, and sweeter napkin ne'er had king in all the world, he took up his flask and began talking to himself as though he were another man, and answering himself as though he were somebody else. "Dear lad, thou art the sweetest fellow in all the world. I do love thee as a lover loveth his lass. La, thou dost make me shame to speak so to me in this solitary place, no one being by, and yet if thou wilt have me say so, I do love thee as thou lovest me. Nay then, wilt thou not take a drink of good Malmsey? After thee, lad, after thee. Nay, I beseech thee, sweeten the draught with thy lips." And he passed the flask from his right hand to his left. "And thou wilt force it on me so. I must needs do thy bidding, yet with the more pleasure do I so as I drink thy very good health." Here he took a long, deep draught. "And now, sweet lad, 'tis thy turn next." Here he passed the bottle from his left hand back again to his right. "I take it, sweet chuck, and here's wishing thee as much good as thou wishest me." Saying this, he took another draught, and truly he drank enough for two. All this time, merry Robin lay upon the bank and listened, while his stomach so quaked with laughter that he was forced to press his palm across his mouth to keep it from bursting forth, for truly he would not have spoiled such a goodly jest for the half of Nottinghamshire. Having gotten his breath from his last draught, the friar began talking again in this wise. Now, sweet lad, canst thou not sing me a song? La, I know not. I am but in an ill voice this day. Pry thee, ask me not. Dost thou not hear how I croak like a frog? Nay, nay, thy voice is as sweet as any bullfinch. Come, sing, I pry thee. I would rather hear thee sing than eat a fair feast. Alas, I would fain not sing before one that can pipe so well and hath heard so many goodly songs and ballads. Ne'ertheless, an thou wilt have it so, I will do my best. But now methinks that thou and I might sing some fair song together. Dost thou not know a certain dainty little catch called the loving youth and the scornful maid? Why, truly methinks I have heard it ere now. Then dost thou not think that thou couldst take the lass's part if I take the lad's? I know not, but I will try. Begin thou with the lad, and I will follow with the lass. Then, singing first with a voice deep and gruff, and anon and one high and squeaking, he blithely trolled the merry catch of the loving youth and the scornful maid. He, "Ah, it's wilt thou come with me, my love, and it's wilt thou love him mine, for I will give unto thee, my love, gay knots and ribbons so fine. I'll woo thee, love, on my bended knee, and I'll pipe sweet songs to none but thee. Then it's hark, 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 to the winged lark, and it's hark to the cooing dove, and the bright daffodil groweth down by the rill. So come thou and be my love." Now get thee away, young man so fine. Now get thee away, I say. For my true love shall never be thine, and so thou hadst better not stay. Thou art not a fine enough lad for me, so I'll wait till a better young man I see. For it's hark, 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 to the winged lark, and it's hark to the cooing dove, and the bright daffodil groweth down by the rill, yet never I'll be thy love. Then straight will I seek for another fair she, for many a maid can be found. And as thou wilt never have aught of me, by thee will I never be bound. For never is a blossom in the field so rare, but others are found that are just as fair. So it's hark, 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 to the joyous lark, and it's hark to the cooing dove, and the bright daffodil groweth down by the rill, and I'll seek me another dear love. Young man, turn not so very quick away, another fair lass to find. Methinks I have spoken in haste today, nor have I made up my mind. And if thou only wilt stay with me, I'll love no other sweet lad but thee. Here Robin could contain himself no longer, but burst forth into a mighty roar of laughter. Then the holy friar, keeping on with the song, he joined in the chorus, and together they sang, all, as one might say, bellowed. So it's hark, 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 to the joyous lark, and it's hark, 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 to the cooing dove, for the bright daffodil groweth down by the rill, and I'll be thine own true love. So they sang together, for the stout friar did not seem to have heard Robin's laughter, neither did he seem to know that the yeoman had joined in with the song, but with eyes half closed, looking straight before him, and wagging his round head from side to side in time to the music, he kept on bravely to the end, and he and Robin finishing up with a mighty roar that might have been heard a mile. But no sooner had the last word been sung than the holy man seized his steel cap, clamped it on his head, and springing to his feet, cried in a great voice, "What spy have we here? Come forth, thou limb of evil, and I will carve thee into as fine pudding meat as e'er a wife in Yorkshire cooked of a Sunday." Hereupon he drew from beneath his robes a great broadsword, full as stout as was Robin's. "Nay, put up thy pinking iron, friend," quoth Robin, standing up with the tears of laughter still on his cheeks. "Folk who have sung so sweetly together should not fight thereafter." Hereupon he leaped down the bank to where the other stood. "I tell thee, friend," he said, "my throat is as parched with that song as e'er a barley stubble in October. Hast thou aptly any malmsey left in that stout pottle?" "Truly," said the friar in a glum voice, "thou dost ask thyself freely where thou art not bidden. Yet I trust I am too good a Christian to refuse any man drink that is athirst. Such as there is aught thou art welcome to a drink of the same." And he held the pottle out to Robin. Robin took it without more ado, and putting it to his lips, tilted his head back, while that which was within said, "Glug, glug, glug," for more than 3 winks, I wot. The stout friar watched Robin anxiously the while, and when he was done, took the pottle quickly. He shook it, held it betwixt his eyes, and the light looked reproachfully at the yeoman, and straightway placed it at his own lips, where it came away again. There was naught within it. "Dost thou know the country hereabouts, thou good and holy man?" asked Robin, laughing. "Yea, somewhat," answered the other dryly. "And dost thou know of a certain spot called Fountain Abbey?" "Yea, somewhat." "Then perchance thou knowest also of a certain one who goeth by the name of the Curtal Friar of Fountain Abbey?" "Yea, somewhat." "Well then, good fellow, holy father, or whatever thou art," quoth Robin, "I would know whether this same friar is to be found upon this side of the river or the other." "That," quoth the friar, "is a practical question, upon which the cunning rules appertaining to logic touch not. I do advise thee to find that out by the aid of thine own 5 senses, sight, feeling, and what not." "I do wish much," quoth Robin, looking thoughtfully at the stout priest, "to cross yon ford and strive to find this same good friar." "Truly," said the other piously, "it is a goodly wish on the part of one so young. Far be it from me to check thee in so holy a quest. Friend, the river is free to all." "Yea, good father," said Robin, "but thou seest that my clothes are of the finest, and I fain would not get them wet. Methinks thy shoulders are stout and broad. Couldst thou not find it in thy heart to carry me across?" "Now, by the white hand of the Holy Lady of the Fountain," burst forth the friar in a mighty rage, "dost thou, poor puny stripling, thou kiss my lady a la popinjay? Thou, what shall I call thee? Dost thou ask me, the holy tuck, to carry thee? Now I swear." Here he paused suddenly, then slowly the anger passed from his face, and his little eyes twinkled once more. But why should I not? Quoth he piously. Did not the holy Saint Christopher ever carry the stranger across the river? And should I, poor sinner that I am, be ashamed to do likewise? Come with me, stranger, and I will do thy bidding in an humble frame of mind. So saying, he clambered up the bank, closely followed by Robin, and led the way to the shallow, pebbly ford, chuckling to himself the while, as though he were enjoying some goodly jest within himself. Having come to the ford, he girded up his robes about his loins, tucked his good broadsword beneath his arm, and stooped his back to take Robin upon it. Suddenly he straightened up. Methinks, quoth he, thou to get thy weapon wet, let me tuck it beneath mine arm along with mine own. Nay, good father, said Robin, I would not burden thee with aught of mine but myself. Dost thou think, said the friar mildly, that the good Saint Christopher would have sought his own ease so? Nay, give me thy tool as I bid thee, for I would carry it as a pendant to my pride. Upon this, without more ado, Robin Hood unbuckled his sword from his side and handed it to the other, who thrust it with his own beneath his arm. Then once more the friar bent his back, and Robin having mounted upon it, he stepped sturdily into the water, and so strode onward, splashing in the shoal and breaking all the smooth surface into ever-widening rings. At last he reached the other side, and Robin leaped lightly from his back. Many thanks, good father, quoth he. Thou art indeed a good and holy man. Prithee, give me my sword and let me away, for I am in haste. At this the stout friar looked upon Robin for a long time, his head on one side, and with a most waggish twist to his face. Then he slowly winked his right eye. Nay, good youth, said he gently, I doubt not that thou art in haste with thine affairs, yet thou dost think nothing of mine. Thine are of a carnal nature, mine are of a spiritual nature, a holy work, so to speak. Moreover, mine affairs do lie upon the other side of this stream. I see by thine quest of this same holy recluse that thou art a good young man, and most reverent to the cloth. I did get wet coming hither, and am sadly afraid that should I wade the water again, I might get certain cricks and pains i' the joints that would mar my devotions for many a day to come. I know that, since I have so humbly done thy bidding, thou wilt carry me back again. Thou seest how Saint Godric, that holy hermit whose natal day this is, hath placed in my hands 2 swords, and in thine never a one. Therefore be persuaded, good youth, and carry me back again. Robin looked up and he looked down, biting his nether lip. Quoth he, Thou cunning friar, thou hast me fair and fast enow. Let me tell thee that not one of thy cloth hath so hoodwinked me in all my life before. I might have known from thy looks that thou wert no such holy man as thou didst pretend to be. Nay, interrupted the friar, I bid thee speak not so scurrilously neither. I bid thee speak not so scurrilously. Scurrilously neither. Scurrilous, making or spreading scandalous claims about someone with the intent of damaging their reputation. I bid thee speak not so scurrilously neither. I bid thee speak not so scurrilously neither, lest thou mayest perchance feel the prick of an inch or so of blue steel. Tut, tut, said Robin, speak not so, friar. The loser hath ever the right to use his tongue as he doth list. Give me my sword. Do promise to carry thee back straightway. Nay, I will not lift the weapon against thee. Marry, come up, quoth the friar. I fear thee not, fellow. Here is thy skewer, and get thyself presently ready, for I would hasten back. So Robin took his sword again, and buckled it at his side, and then he bent his stout back, and took the friar upon it. Now I wot Robin Hood had a heavier load to carry in the friar than the friar had in him. Moreover, he did not know the ford, so he went stumbling among the stones, now stepping into a deep hole, and now nearly tripping over a boulder, while the sweat ran down his face in beads from the hardness of his journey and the heaviness of his load. Meantime, the friar kept digging his heels into Robin's sides, and bidding him hasten, calling him many ill names the while. To all this Robin answered never a word, but having softly felt around till he found the buckle of the belt that held the friar's sword, he worked slyly at the fastenings, seeking to loosen them. Thus it came about that by the time he had reached the other bank with his load, the friar's sword belt was loose, albeit he knew it not. So when Robin stood on dry land and the friar leaped from his back, the yeoman gripped hold of the sword, so that blade, sheath, and strap came away from the holy man, leaving him without a weapon. Now then, quoth merry Robin, panting as he spake, and wiping the sweat from his brow, I have thee, fellow. This time that same saint of whom thou didst speak, but now hath delivered 2 souls into my hand, and hath stripped thine away from thee. Now if thou dost not carry me back, and that speedily, I swear I will prick thy skin till it is as full of holes as a slashed doublet. The good friar said not a word for a while, but he looked at Robin with a grim look. Now, said he at last, I did think that thy wits were of the heavy sort, and knew not that thou wert so cunning. Truly thou hast me upon the hip. Give me my sword, and I promise not to draw it against thee save in self-defence. Also, I promise to do thy bidding, and take thee upon my back, and carry thee. So jolly Robin gave him his sword again, which the friar buckled to his side, and this time looked to it that it was more secure in its fastenings. Then tucked up his robes once more, he took Robin Hood upon his back, and without a word stepped into the water, and so waded on in silence, while Robin sat laughing upon his back. At last he reached the middle of the ford where the water was deepest. Here he stopped for a moment, and then, with a sudden lift of his hand and heave of his shoulders, fairly shot Robin over his head as though he were a sack of grain. Psh! Down went Robin into the water with a mighty splash. There, quoth the holy man, calmly turning back again to the shore, let that cool thy hot spirit, if it may. Meantime, after much splashing, splish, splash, splish, 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 Robin had gotten to his feet and stood gazing about him all bewildered, the water running from him in pretty little rills. At last he shot the water out of his ears and spat some out of his mouth, and gathering his scattered wits together, saw the stout friar standing on the bank and laughing. Oh! Then I wot was Robin Hood, a madman. Stay thou, villain, roared he. I am after thee straight, and if I do not carve thy brawn for thee this day, may I never lift finger again. So saying, he dashed, splashing to the bank. Thou needest not hasten thyself unduly, quoth the stout friar. Fear not, I will abide here, and if thou dost not cry alack a day ere long time is gone, may I never more peep through the brake at a fallow deer. And now Robin, having reached the bank, began without more ado to roll up his sleeves above his wrist. The friar, also, tucked his robes more about him, showing a great stout arm on which the muscles stood out like humps of an aged tree. Then Robin saw what he had not wotted of before, that the friar had also a coat of chain mail beneath his gown. "Look to thyself," cried Robin, drawing his good sword. "Shing!" "Ay, marry," quoth the friar, who held his already in his hand. So without more ado they came together, and thereupon began a fierce and mighty battle. Cling! Ching! Shoo! Shoo! Shing! Right and left, and up and down, and back and forth they fought. The swords flashed in the sun, and then met with a clash that sounded far and near. I wot this was no playful bout at quarterstaff, but a grim and serious fight of real earnest. Thus they strove for an hour or more, pausing every now and then to rest, at which times each looked at the other with wonder, and thought that never had he seen so stout a fellow. Then once again they would go at it more fiercely than ever. Yet in all this time neither had harmed the other, nor caused his blood to flow. At last merry Robin cried, "Hold thy hand, good friend," whereupon both lowered their swords. "Now I crave a boon ere we begin again," quoth Robin, wiping the sweat from his brow. For they had striven so long that he began to think that it would be an ill-done thing either to be smitten himself or to smite so stout and brave a fellow. "What wouldst thou have of me?" asked the friar. "Only this," quoth Robin, "that thou wilt let me blow thrice upon my bugle horn." The friar bent his brows and looked shrewdly at Robin Hood. "Now I do verily think that thou hast some cunning trick in this," quoth he. "Ne'ertheless I fear thee not, and will let thee have thy wish, providing thou wilt also let me blow thrice upon this little whistle." "With all my heart," quoth Robin. "So here goes for one." So saying, he raised his silver horn to his lips and blew thrice upon it, clear and high. Meantime the friar stood watching keenly for what might come to pass, holding in his fingers the while a pretty silver whistle, such as knights use for calling their hawks back to their wrists, which whistle always hung at his girdle along with his rosary. Scarcely had the echo of the last note of Robin's bugle come winding back from across the river, when 4 tall men in Lincoln green came running around the bend of the road, each with a bow in his hand and an arrow ready knocked upon the string. "Ha! Is it thus, thou traitor knave?" cried the friar. "Then, marry, look to thyself." So saying, he straightway clapped the hawk's whistle to his lips and blew a blast that was both loud and shrill. And now there came a crackling of the bushes that lined the other side of the road, and presently forth from the covert burst 4 great shaggy hounds. "At 'em, sweet lips! At 'em, bell throat! At 'em, beauty! At 'em, fangs!" cried the friar, pointing at Robin. And now it was well for that yeoman that a tree stood nigh him beside the road, else had he had an ill chance of it, ere one could say, "Gaffer down the dale." The hounds were upon him, and he had only time to drop his sword and leap lightly into the tree, around which the hounds gathered, looking up at him as though he were a cat on the eaves. But the friar quickly called off his dogs. "At him!" cried he, pointing down the road to where the yeoman was standing stock still with wonder of what they saw. As the hawk darts down upon its quarry, so sped the 4 dogs at the yeoman. But when the 4 men saw the hounds so coming, all with one accord, saving only Will Scarlet, drew each man his goose feather to his ear, and let fly his shaft. And now the old ballad telleth of a wondrous thing that happened, for thus it says that each dog so shot at leaped lightly aside, and as the arrow passed him whistling, caught it in his mouth, and bit it in twain. Harr! Now it would have been an ill day for these 4 good fellows, had not Will Scarlet stepped before the others, and met the hounds as they came rushing. Why, how now, Fangs? Cried he sternly. Down, Beauty! Down, Sirrah! What means this? At the sound of his voice, each dog shrank back quickly, and then straightway came to him and licked his hands, and fawned upon him, as is the wont of dogs that meet one they know. Then the 4 yeomen came forward, the hounds leaping around Will Scarlet joyously. Why, how now? Cried the stout friar. What means this? Art thou wizard to turn those wolves into lambs? Ha! Cried he, when they had come still nearer. Can I trust mine eyes? What means it that I see young Master William Gamwell in such company? Nay, Tuck, said the young man, as the 4 came forward to where Robin was now clambering down from the tree in which he had been roosting, he having seen that all danger was over for the time. Nay, Tuck, my name is no longer Will Gamwell, but Will Scarlet, and this is my good uncle, Robin Hood, with whom I am abiding just now. Truly, good master, said the friar, looking somewhat abashed and reaching out his great palm to Robin. I have oft heard thy name both sung and spoken of, but I never thought to meet thee in battle. I crave thy forgiveness, and do wonder not that I found so stout a man against me. Truly, most holy father, said Little John, I am more thankful than e'er I was in all my life before that our good friend Scarlet knew thee and thy dogs. I tell thee seriously that I felt my heart crumble away from me when I saw my shaft so miss its aim, and those great beasts of thine coming straight at me. Thou mayest indeed be thankful, friend, said the friar gravely. But, Master Will, how cometh it that thou dost now abide in Sherwood? Why, Tuck, dost thou not know of my ill happening with my father's steward? Answered Scarlet. Yea, truly, yet I knew not that thou wert in hiding because of it. Marry, the times are all awry, when a gentleman must lie hidden for so small a thing. But we are losing time, quoth Robin, and I have yet to find that same Curtal friar. Why, uncle, thou hast not far to go, said Will Scarlet, pointing to the friar, for there he stands beside thee. How? Quoth Robin, art thou the man that I have been at such pains to seek all day, and have got such a ducking for? Why, truly, said the friar demurely, some do call me the Curtal Friar of Fountain Dale, others again call me in jest the Abbot of Fountain Abbey, others still again call me simple Friar Tuck. I like the last name best, quoth Robin, for it doth slip more glibly off the tongue. But why didst thou not tell me thou wert when I sought, instead of sending me searching for black moonbeams? Why, truly thou didst not ask me, good master, quoth stout Tuck. But what didst thou desire of me? Nay, quoth Robin, the day groweth late, and we cannot stand longer talking here. Come back with us to Sherwood, and I will unfold all to thee as we travel along. So, without tarrying longer, they all departed, with the stout dogs at their heels, and wended their way back to Sherwood again. But it was long past nightfall ere they reached the greenwood tree. Now listen, for next I will tell how Robin Hood compassed the happiness of 2 young lovers, aided by the merry Friar Tuck of Fountain Dale.